Hey everyone, Del21 here. I'm almost ready to go home. Well, I am ready to go home. I'm about to go home. Basically, this is going to be a short one. This is basically a response to a question I was asked by Sean Ross. Basically, he wanted to know if the shifting that the 8-speed transmission does in the 3.6 is that basically wants to know if the erratic shifting that the 3.6 does, if it's normal. My response to you, buddy, is really I'm not the best person for you to ask that, being that my truck has been in a flood and it's been underwater. Nothing my truck's going to do is going to be normal. To an extent. But overall, the only issues that I said I've had with my transmission is first to second gear. So essentially all the other gears, second through 8, all operate fine. They all shift smooth and everything. They don't slip or anything. Well, I can tell you this in my experience with the 8-speed transmission attached to 3.6, yes, it is quite normal for it to be shifting erratically. I must say, I have to be a little bit specific to you with that, shifting erratically. Your transmission should not, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to hit this person's dog. Their dog just ran across the road. Your transmission shouldn't be hunting for gears. And what's sad is that the 8-speed transmission in 3.6, I know if you know what gear hunting is in an automatic transmission, you would swear down that that's what the 8-speed transmission is doing. But believe me, it's not. It's not. Believe me. Your truck is not hunting for gears. It's not. What it is that these transmissions are programmed to shift out at 2,000 RPM. That is the RPM that, if you're doing a relearn on the transmission, that is the RPM that you have to get the truck to and no higher. So if you're driving and you're accelerating enough at speed for it to reach 2,000 RPM, if you're going slower than about 50-55 miles an hour and you're not accelerating roughly, you're accelerating quite normally or softly, what will happen is your truck will limit, these trucks limit themselves from 7th and 8th gear. It locks out 7th and 8th gear. You can't the computer will not shift to it. And what happens is your truck will, say if I'm doing 40, it will try to get the 5th gear. It will try to get the 6th gear, but you don't need to be in 6th gear. And what it'll do is that once you accelerate and you don't put a lot of throttle behind it, what it'll do is it'll shift to each gear really, really quickly. And what it'll do is it'll shift so quickly that it feels like it's hunting for gears, but it's not. Especially if you give a sudden burst of throttle, it'll act like it's hunting. But it's not hunting, it's quite normal. The thing is that transmissions nowadays no longer rely on just pressure to control the transmission, to know what gear it should be in at any given time. It's now controlled by your ABS system, your traction control system, your vehicle speed, your throttle open position, and your oil pressure, your oil temperature, how long it takes the clutch pack to fill. There's so much stuff in it, and you might not meet that requirement that the transmission needs to fill or to shift to that next gear. So what it'll do is it'll hold that gear for you, even though you don't need that gear. Or sometimes you'll shift into that next gear and you won't need it. And what it'll do is that when you get off the throttle even slightly, it'll downshift to keep its efficiency. It's an efficiency deal. It's just efficiency. And these 8-speed transmissions love efficiency. Everything from temperature all the way up to your shifting, all the way up to how the throttle responds. It's all about efficiency. So all your transmission is doing is it's trying to shift in what it thinks is efficient. So now, again, this is all based on you not having any issues, no check engine light codes for the transmission control module. This is literally speaking as if the truck all of a sudden just acted up. It just all of a sudden started doing this. Or let's say it's been doing this since you've gotten the truck and you've always thought that it was normal, or you weren't sure if it was normal and you took it to the dealership and they can't find anything wrong. In most cases, what has to happen, if you got it used, if you got your truck used, more than likely what's got to happen is you have to have the dealership do a relearn. Or you have to get a shop to relearn the transmission and adapt to your driving style. If you've got it new, more than likely what could happen is you could have a bad transmission control module. Not highly unlikely, but not highly likely as well. So there is a possibility of that, but more than likely it's either going to be normal or your transmission needs to learn your shift points. So like basically if you've been driving your truck like babying it all this time, and then you've all of a sudden started driving a little bit more aggressively, your transmission is not going to like that. You're going to have to relearn your shift points again. Or every time, if you've been driving it roughly and you've started to, just started to baby your truck, and now you're noticing this quick shifting, it's got to relearn its shift points. My advice is either A, pay attention to when it shifts. When it shifts, does the RPMs go up when they shift, or do the RPMs go down when they shift? If they're going down when they shift really quickly like that, more than likely what's happening is it's trying to be efficient on the shift points that it knows, and it needs to relearn its adaptive shifting. But that's usually what has to happen with electronic transmission, is that they rely so much on what they know about the driving style rather than actually what they have or what it should be doing. Like, for instance, even though they're programmed to shift out at 2,000 RPM under normal acceleration, if your shifting habits is 2,500 RPM, it's going to allow that RPM to go up to 2,500. So if you start babying it after you've been driving it that way, when you get up to that RPM again, it's going to seem like that transmission is slipping. But what's actually going is it learned your shift points of shifting the engine out at 2,500 RPM rather than the 2,000 that it was originally programmed to do. So overall, I would have to say that it at the moment, the way you've described it to me, is that it's not a severe ordeal. It's not something that you should be worried about at the moment. If it's shifting smooth when it goes out and it's not slipping, I can only imagine that it's probably going to be your adaptive shifting needs to be relearned. But as far as anything actually being wrong with your transmission, I seriously doubt it. I think you said it had about 38,000 miles on it. I seriously doubt there's something wrong with the transmission. If anything's wrong with your transmission, it's going to be that TCM. That's it. And the TCM is part of the valve body on these trucks, so you'll have to buy the whole valve body in order to get it fixed. You take it to the dealership if it's under warranty, which at 38,000 miles it should be. If you have an issue with the transmission, and the problem is that if you take it to the dealership, they will not warranty that out unless they can, reenact that issue. And more than likely, I bet you're having this shifting issue about 40 to 55 miles an hour. I bet that's about when you're having this random shifting. If you are, that's what it's doing. It's trying to shift efficiently. But short of that, that's the only information I can give you. That's based on driving this truck and driving a 2018 truck and driving a 2017. They both shifted the same way, and that's what assured me that I can get some life out of this transmission control module before I have to replace it. But that's all I can give for you. Hope that helped. If not, let me know. I'll get back with you again.